There are moments that I feel sometimes quite ashamed to be a New Zealander. One of those is whenever we discuss the nature of child abuse in this country and the number of children who get killed on a regular basis, and New Zealand does nothing about it. We are the second best baby killers in the world per capita. So I'm not proud of that. And Daddy, I'm deeply ashamed to say I'm a New Zealander when those statistics are recorded. And that's at a serious level, but there's also a part of me that has a cultural cringe every time I see New Zealand journalists decide that we're bigger than we are and that the world's got to take us seriously when we're a very small nation stuck down the bottom of the South Pacific, of no consequence really to anybody apart from ourselves. And that we seem to believe that the world must give us a status that is in accord with, well, all the big countries in the world. It's sort of like we're the Jack Russell of international countries, aren't we? You know, if I give you an analogy, there are the big dogs, there are the wolves, and then there are the yappy little things that think they're as big as the big dogs and the wolves. And New Zealand is one of those. We're sort of the Jack Russell of the international community, if you like, if I could cast the analogy. Well, ta-da! In the wake of the Olympic Games closing and New Zealand doing quite well on the medal count, and New Zealand having a record equaling medal haul, there is a closing ceremony at which a stylised map of the world was wheeled out as part of the closing ceremony. And now a number of journalists, particularly at Stuff, in fact, all of the Stuff Sports reporters, apparently, and a number of others have complained that New Zealand was left off the world map at the Paris Olympics closing ceremony and have reported that as a serious issue. As a result of that, I have to say, New Zealand has again proved this sort of that we are culturally deficient and that we think we're more important than we are. I'm looking at a stylised representation of the map that was used at the closing Paris Olympic ceremony, in which you might argue that an entirety of countries were left on because they were just sort of doing a stylised version of the continents. Asia, Europe, Africa, North and South America, Australia's there. And what they're complaining about is that New Zealand isn't. Well, neither is Indonesia, with 250 million people, because they didn't, and neither of any of the Pacific Island countries. Can't see Sri Lanka there. India is poorly represented as well. There's a whole series of countries that might well consider, if they were New Zealanders, that they have been aggrieved and somehow slighted by the closing ceremony. They haven't. It was just a stylised representation, as I said, of the continents that make up, as you know, the rings of the Olympic flag. But it is illustrative, though, of this view that we've always got to take offence when people don't take us seriously. And it even stems through to, for example, we are somehow responsible for saving the world, even though we contribute, less than 0.2% of the world's methane and greenhouse gases. Apparently we've got to lead the world in reining in our appetite for fossil fuels and the like, because God knows why, you know. It's time for New Zealanders to recognise that we are a small country, inconsequential to the rest of the world. And that one of the reasons we all feel a sense of reflective pride is the small, inconsequential country went to a major sporting event and did very well, thank you very much. I think we're fourth on the per capita table, for example, of medals won at the Olympic Games. But I'm always amused by how New Zealand journalists, whether they be sporting or just ordinary journalists, regard any suggestion that New Zealand should be left out of any discussion or diagrammatic representation as somehow a slight upon our nation, our people, our culture and our community. And that sense of grievance, which beats in the heart, I think, of every journalist in this country, is one of the reasons why we are so poorly served by most journalists who've got substandard IQs, very, very poor understandings of history and community, and no real understanding of New Zealand's genuine importance in the world. We're a little bit player. And for a little bit player, we do quite well. But we'll always still be a little bit player.